So what I'm going to make is I'm going to make a cube, and in that cube I'm going to recess an element so we have some innies and outies, and then we're going to put two different textures on it, and then we're going to unwrap it the standard way, and then we're going to unwrap it the other way for, let's say, we're going to get information for baking information and all the curvature map information and stuff like that, and I'll go over it in a bit. But that will be, we'll need to have that one because it's unwrapped in this simpler way, or another way, but then we will use the maps that we get from that version and make a mask that we can use in the engine to reveal from below the paint anything we want. In this case, we'll call it metal. So first I'm going to make the box really simple, and a lot of people always ask me, why don't I make it from a chamfered box? I don't know, because I'm old school and I just do it this way. I don't know, maybe it's more control, whatever it is. I'm going to go to front, and I could make a chamfer box, sure. That's more standard objects, but I'm just going to do it this way. And then I'm going to collapse it to an editable poly. And then I'm going to make sure that it's zeroed out just so we have everything set up right when I start here. Like this. So it's all zeroed out. It's a simple cube, 100 by 100 centimeters, so it's a meter by meter by meter. I'm going to come into my edge mode, turn on my wireframe on shaded, and I will just do a simple quick chamfer. Like I said, this is why people are like, why don't you use the chamfer box? Well, just because I don't. I want to have one division in my case because I want the texture on this side to end before it hits the top. Okay, that's the only reason I'm doing it that way. So I'm going to leave it like that and say, maybe I'll go up a little bit higher. Like this, say okay. And there it is. And if I come back out of here, we'll see that it's not great because the edges are kind of not rounded. So I'll put my weighted normal on it, and now all of a sudden I've got beautiful rounded edges on everything based off of that one polygon, or there's one division. Then I'll collapse it one more time, just for good measure. Now, there's two ways I could do this, and this is the forward thinking of it. I could unwrap this just for the tiling version, which would just be, basically, this is the unwrapped tiling version. If I say unwrap UVW, and I say UV editor, bam, I'm done. Because this tiles across the surface. It doesn't matter how big I make it, but I don't need them all separated out. This is just a tiling, let's say, wall or metal object. So it's perfect, I'm done. So that's the way I could do it. And then I could have my second one, and my second one would be a more specific unwrap so I can get the information about each side and edge having a bend or whatever. But we're not going to do it that way. And before I do that, real quick, before I forget, I'm going to put an extrusion in here. And if you wonder what I did, I just shift and dragged it in, and then shift and dragged it in. And I probably should have done this before, but I didn't, so I'm going to do that. Hopefully now, deselect, and we do weighted normal, and everything looks pretty good. The interior is not great because I didn't subdivide it. I'm going to go back and try that again real quick. 4, grab this one, control, select an edge, do a small quick chamfer on it. Turn off that, so it's just one, say okay. Get out of here, weighted normal, probably have to recalculate it. Boom. Much better. Okay, so I've got this box, and I've got it just simple polygon with some, innies going on, one innie going on. So now I'm going to put some textures on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 textures. I'm going to delete all the stuff right here. Excuse me. I'm going to make 3 materials. Right click, material, general, and we're going to do TBR metal rough. Zoom in. I'm going to name this what I need for my textures. So I already did these textures. So one of them is going to be called green painted metal, and then I'm going to duplicate it. One of them is going to be called red orange plastic, and Get back to the right class. And one of them I'm just going to use here, but I'm going to call it the same name just so I have it as the same name. Call it copy, and I'm going to call this one metal under. So it's going to be metal under these textures. And just to make it readable, I'll come and grab base color, go to general, go to bitmap. I'm going to go to the actual materials in Unity, because that's the way we should work, and find right material here. Art, I made a new folder, there we go, textures. I'm going to go to, this one's the green painted. Now this is metal under for some reason. Oh, this is green painted, yeah. Green painted base map, okie dokie. And then I'm going to come to this one and do the same thing, but use the other one. And that's the orange plastic base map, just so we can see the colors on them. And this one I'm going to leave white. That's just fine. Okay. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, go to front view, in the poly mode, we call this edge box lecture. Okay. Don't go crazy, fix it. Okay. So I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna come to the poly mode and I'm just gonna grab like this whole thing. Like that. And then I'm gonna check it. Because what I wanna do is grab the top edge, so I have two edges, so like that, and then I don't want this bottom part, so I'm going to deselect that one, and then I'm going to deselect this one, and that's right, and this one, I'm just basically cutting it in half, is what I'm trying to do here, this right here, except I'm cutting it in half in an interesting way, so we can see more about what's going on. Okay, so I have one object on here, and like I did before, I'm going to grab this material and throw it on that object. Now, it's going to throw it on everything or do something weird, but that's okay. Then I'm going to go Control I, because Control I is inverse selection, and I'm going to go to the red one and say the same thing. And now I should have a red, plastic, and a metal. And if you look at them, the textures aren't that exciting and everything. But we can see that there's something going on, and there's probably something going on in here too, but we'll fix that in a minute. Okay, so now I've got two materials on here. Obviously some unwrapping issues, we'll deal with that right now. So like I said, you can either unwrap the metal underneath first as UV1, or UV channel 1, or you can do it second. I've been doing it second just because I've been thinking about it, but really the best way to do it is first. And there's a couple of reasons why you want it to be first. And we'll go into that in a minute. But basically, the metal version of our material here needs to be unwrapped so it's like an individual object. It's not really made to be tiling. There are ways to do some tiling stuff, but we aren't going to get into that today. We just want this unwrapped in a semi-decent, efficient way, and that's the first part, the underlying metal. We want that to have our edge information. We want that to have all that, basic object information, not any of the normal stuff, but just the basics. So I'm going to come in here and go UV unwrap, and I'm going to leave it on 1. I'm going to open up the editor, and I'm not even going to change the IDs. I'm going to use them all as one ID. I'm going to grab everything as a polygon here. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to say mapping, flat mapping, and I'm going to say fill holes, 45-degree angle. Let's go to 30. Maybe we can get something tighter. Maybe it needs to be 60, I guess. And say okay and see what we get. And we get something like that. That's not horrible. If we check our checkerboard on here, let's see what it looks like. F2 there. It's pretty good. I mean, it's a box, so obviously it's going to be easier and stuff, but we can see that half of our objects this way and half our objects the other way. And it split them up by face, and the pieces look pretty decent. I might want to attach some pieces back up, but we can always come back and do that and then re-import it into the engine. That's one of the things we need to start learning too, is unwrapping and doing things to your model. Is when you put it in the engine, it's not over. It doesn't mean it's done just because it's going in the engine. The only one that I don't like is this one, and I don't know where its counter is, so I'm just going to try and see if I stitch it, and then stitch it, and I know it's big, and that's fine, we'll deal with it. Oh, you know what? I don't think those need to be there. I think there's one maybe here. Alright. We'll stitch it. And then what we'll do, we'll grab everything, do a quick relax on it just to get it cleaned up. Optimize Unfold 3D is the new way of doing stuff in here. Totally fine. Again, we're not worried about perfection. We're worried about getting everything packed up and nice. And again, it's using the Unfold default here. This is the new way instead of Max. And basically, it looks like these edges need to be given that same love. So I'll say Stitch Selected, and I'll just keep them all the same. Stitch Selected. And then we'll do that one more time. Grab everything, just go pack UVs, pack it up, say OK, bam. OK. So I could organize these if I want. I could stitch them together and stuff like that. And we may come back, like I said, and do that. But for now, I've got my first UV set unwrapped correctly. Now this is UV 1. And of course, those simple, I should show you those textures real quick. Those textures are just a green texture with some deform. This is a tiling texture. Okay, so I have two tiling textures. One is for wood, or one is for plastic, and one is for painted metal. It's not really going to show up until we put our materials and textures all together, but that's all I needed it for, so I could figure out where I was. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is unwrap it again, but this time I'm going to unwrap it in UV channel 2. And I think that you can just add another channel right here, but I always had bugs with that, so I always just collapse it and throw a new UV channel on it, and then go to 2. That way it kind of locks in UV channel 1 and makes sure that that's set before you change. And I'm going to say abandon on this one, just like that. I'm not going to move the unwrap I just did when I say abandon. And then I'm going to come over and say open editor. And when I do that, it's unwrapped in a box form, sort of. So it should be seeing this forward and stuff like that. So what's happened is it's basically planar mapped it from the top. Or from the side. Apparently it did something weird. So we're just going to come over here real quick and go box, and bam. Now we can see everything the way it kind of should be. We know it's a tiling texture, so we just want to make sure it tiles. If you want, you can stitch them together and stuff like that. It's, you know, it's up to you how you want to play with it, but for now that works fine. And then I'm going to close it, and then I'm done. I'm done with my unwrapping for the tiling part. So then I'll collapse it to an editable poly, and now I have 2 UV channels. UV channel 2 in Max is a hard thing to get to show as the default unless I change the materials over here. So if I come over to this material, like I showed before, map channel or UV channel 1 is what it's defaulted to, so I'm going to say 2. And we'll take a look, and it doesn't look much different, but that's because it's a generic texture. And then I'm going to come over to this one and say 2 as well, because really that's what this is. UV channel 2 has this texture unwrapped. UV channel 1 is for something else. Okay, y'all follow me? So I've got 2 UV channel, or 2 textures on here, and 2 UV channels. One is a generic unwrap, and one of them is broken the parts into a flattened map, so I can get all the edges and stuff. The thing with Substance Painter is Substance Painter doesn't allow you to paint into other UV channels. It only pays attention to UV material IDs, but not UV channels. So for us to be able to get the information from a UV channel that is not 1, we need to duplicate this object and copy it over. But you say, I've already made this UV channel 1 is the one that's unwrapped for Substance Painter. Yes, but the other problem with this version is that this version has multiple textures on it. When I bring it into Substance Painter, I want it to be flattened into one texture. So I'm just going to duplicate this object over here, and I'm going to call this, we'll call this UV channel 2. Just like that. Now I'm going to come up to that material that we had up here that we aren't using, and I'm going to throw it on the object real quick. This one, put it on there. And then I'm going to make sure that all my UV channels are UV channel 1. And I'm going to say set our UV material IDs. I'm sorry. I'm going to make sure all my material IDs are 1, because even though I threw one texture on here, it still thinks it has 2 IDs. So I'm just going to say 1. So when I import this back over to Substance Painter, it's not going to give me 2 channels to work into, or 2 whatever they call them in Substance Painter. I think I fixed this one too, but it's just going to give me 1 of these. If I had 2 materials on here, it would give me a list of 2, and then technically I'd be dealing with the different textures separately, and I'd be exporting 2 textures. I want 1 texture for the whole box. So I'm going to say File, New, and in here I'm going to say Select. I'm going to come to wherever I exported that to. Did I not export it yet? Hold on. Cancel. Maybe I'll come back here. I'm going to export this. That's kind of key. Really what I should do is zero this out, even though it doesn't matter, because it's just a kind of a dummy object. So I'm going to say 0, 0, 0, and then I'm going to say isolate, so it's the only one in the scene. So I make sure if I select it, it's the only thing selected. I'm going to export this out. I'm going to put it in my box example because I'm not using this version in the engine. So I'm going to call this painter, we'll just call this UV channel 2 just to match. UV channel 2. So simple, really easy, 1 material, and it's only going to look at UV channel 1. So if we come back and go to Substance Painter, and we say File, and we say New, and we say Select, and we come to UV channel 2, and we say Open 2048, fine, discard, and there we go. And if I look at it, it's my box. Simple, easy to look at box. Now, the first thing we always do when we bring something in Substance Painter, as I've said before, is bake. And that's all we're going to do in here. That's it. You've unwrapped it. Let's make sure the unwrap is correct real quick. I'll push F1. I can see there's the unwrap that we looked at. Okay, nothing's overlapping. I probably could have pulled these out a little bit further, but that's fine. So I'm going to bake. I'm going to bake at 2048 so it matches. I could probably go higher just so I have a bigger one. And I'm going to come to this bake, and I'm going to say bake selected textures. And that's it. It's not giving me a high res, it's nothing but breaking apart or baking this object as itself. And that's the map we want, by the way, the one you just saw. Or this one. No, the curvature. Okay. So, if we look down here, these maps it just baked, one of them is called the curvature map. If I click on it and I roll over it, you can see it's this map right here. Okay, let me explain what a curvature map is. A curvature map is a texture that the computer figures out what are innies and outies, or what is a convex edge, which would be going inward, or a convex edge, which is going outward, and a concave edge, which is going inward. And it marks those by saying white is pushing out and black is pushing in. So if we look at these textures, do it here. Here, actually, just do it this way. You go to all libraries, go to project, go to textures, and there it is. If we look at this material, this texture, we've got white around all the edges of the box, and we've got black as it pushed in and made that inner corner. So this is the only concave edge I have on this object. But everything else is marked and set up. So what I have to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to export this texture. This is the only reason I'm in here today. Export this texture. I'm going to name it into this folder, and it's going to give me the stupid name it's given it, and we'll say select folder. And then I'm going to go into Photoshop and open that texture real quick. And I think I'm in texture here. Yeah. Okay. So here's my material that came out of it. There's some weirdness going on here. I wouldn't worry about it because this is going to be our beat up edge. Now I'm showing you for doing edge wear and stuff like that in Engine, but it can be used for anything. And if you start thinking about it, you could really do this. I've seen people use this whole method to make color changes across the same object by just having twice the texture, and then you have a mask saying use this one and that one. So okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to make this a color texture because it puts it out as one. So actually, yeah, first thing I've done here, let me open up something. I was thinking about that. In my textures is I've made a metal under texture before, and that's just basically a metal. I think it was something standard metal. I'm going to grab that base map. We need this base standard metal map for this whole process too. So I'm using this real quick, and then I'm going to take this texture right here and say Control A, Control C to copy it. And I'm going to come over to my my metal texture. This is the base color texture. We'll explain why it needs to be this texture. Go to my channels and say plus down here, which is going to make an alpha channel, and then I'm going to paste. One of the problems is I made it too big, so let me shrink this real quick. Oops. There we go. Control A, Control C, come back over here, paste it into our alpha channel, just like that. And it just sits right underneath all of this right here. So then we need to make it a little bit more stark, because basically anything gray is 50%, anything white is 100%, anything black is 0 for an alpha. So we have to make this more alpha-y, so I'm going to go Control L, which is levels, and I'm going to turn my black up a lot, and then I'm going to turn my white up a lot. So for right now, for the first pass on this right here is because they're bleeding out, but that's fine. I'm going to leave it like this. I'm just going to keep it the way it looks right here, and we're really sharp edges and stuff, so you can really see the change. And then I'm going to say, for this texture, save, and I'm going to save it as a target, and I call it metal under base map under my textures folder, and I'm going to say OK. Just like that, 32-bit, so I get my alpha. Now you can do this with ping or anything you want, but I like the alpha, at least when I'm starting, because I have that texture I can see, or that alpha channel. Okay, so back to here, I'm going to hide my texture, my object right there. I'm going to unhide the other one. Actually, I guess I should have done it in isolation, and then hide the other one, UV channel 2, select this one. Select this one. This one has the 2 UV channels on it that I'm going to use. One is the base layer and one is the other, is the actual color. So I'm going to export this. I'm going to export this over to the Unity area. Textures, I'm going to call this layered here. I'm going to go over the edgeware box. I'm just going to write over that one. Okay, say OK. And then I'm going to check my UV, I'm going to check my Unity here. And inside of Unity, it should have imported that thing. I have a new folder up here, classic example. And I'll check and look at it. It's fine, but of course it's not set up because we haven't done that yet. So I'll do this, and leave that alone, change this to from model material name and say OK. Okay, so if I look at this now, and I look at it in the engine, I'll throw this up here, we'll see I've got 2 materials. Now they're stupid Autodesk materials. I still haven't figured out the bug of why I can't go get HDRP lit anymore, but it's okay because in this case we want layered lit. We don't want regular lit, we want layered lit, which means we're going to be able to put more than one texture on here. Okay, so I'm going to say layered lit for this one. And then I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to change it to HDRP layered lit, and of course it went white, because this is how layered lits work. Layered lit is a multiple material layer count that sits on top, and we talked about this last week, and the one that's on top is the one that you see. So even when I put the right materials in here with the green or whatever, it's going to be showing, or the red in this case, it's going to be showing the white, because the one below that in layer, this is the main layer, this is where I put the color, but the one below that in here is the one where it sees it first. So actually I kind of did this backwards, but that's okay, we can still do this. Okay. I think about these things as I do them, but here we go. So I'm going to come to this base layer. We're going to put it backwards, meaning that I'm going to put the paint on first and then put the metal scratches afterwards. It's kind of backwards to me, but that's fine. It still works. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to take this. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to lock you down. Okay, now the problem with this is you may get confused. You keep seeing a bunch of different things. So what I like to do is make sure I for sure only have one thing open at a time. So main layer first. I don't need the layer list. We aren't going to actually just copy a material in. We could, but we're just going to do it. We're going to build them from scratch. And then I'm going to leave this one open for right now. Actually, I'm going to close this one. I'm gonna go to options real quick and say, yeah, I'm gonna leave that one too. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is just come in here to my red orange, and I'm gonna put red orange into my base map. And then I'm gonna come over to my mask map, and I'm gonna put that in my base map. Then I'm gonna come over to my normal, I'm gonna put that into my main layer base map. Then I'm gonna close this, and what I haven't done is brought those materials, those textures from the new one over, so I'm gonna go to, let me make sure that I have the right, yeah, I'm gonna grab the metal under base map TGA, because that has the alpha, and if you want to look at it, you can click on it, and then I gotta have this one, and then click on this, and then I can come over and see there's my alpha. So that's working, that's the one we just made. Okay, back to this, and lock that. And then I'm gonna go to my other two mask and normal map for my metal. I'm gonna make sure they get thrown in here too. So now I've got 3 different materials, or 3 different texture sets, one for metal, one for green, and one for red. And we're only working on the red right now because this is a separate material, just like a material ID. Green is below it. It's the same exact thing, but I'm gonna have to do this twice. Okay, go to layer 1, come in here and say layer, I'm going to use the metal under base and put it right there. There you go. That's part of the problem is we're looking at the back side here, but I'm going to flip this around. So there's the metal under base texture, okay? And then I'm going to go to metal under base mask map, and now I can see there's the metal. That's the one I want metal to be only peering through at, this is what's going to be underneath the paint layers, this simple metal material. I don't think there's really much in the normals, but we'll throw it on there just for the cake, just in case. Oh, and this normal's probably not set up, so I'm going to go fix that. Normal map, apply, let's check these while we're here. Normal map, apply, normal map, apply. Okay, so we're back here. So I've got my metal, and I've got it sitting on top of my red. We just don't see it because the red's underneath it. So, and it could have been done the other way, and it probably would have made more sense to do it the other way, but we're gonna do it this way. And then I'm gonna come here, and I'm gonna say use opacity map as density map. And if you roll over it, when enabled, HDRP uses the alpha channel, the opacity map, of the base color, which is that one we just made and we just dropped onto here as the density map. So if I click this button, suddenly, look at that. I've got the beat up edge wear of the original box that we were talking about, that unwrap we just made. So let me do it again. I'll do it for the green. Again, this probably would have been smarter to do in a different way. The other thing I want to point out too is because, okay, let's come back to full green. So right here, there's a bunch of different things we can change this to. As you can see, it's got 0, 1, or UV1, UV2, UV3, UV0, planar, and triplanar. Okay, just so you understand, for whatever reason, Max uses 1 through 4, and the engines, generally speaking, use 0 through 3. So 0 is 1 in Max, 2 is, or 1 is 2 in Max. So it's stupid, but that's just the way the engineering happened on both Unreal and Unity and every engine I've ever worked in. And Max and Maya and other programs still use 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're now in UV1, which is correct for the metal. We know that metal edge is UV1, but if you remember, this is supposed to be set to UV2 because this is unwrapped for UV2. So I'm going to come here, and all I have to do is change that to UV1 in here, which is 2 in Max, and now I've got it unwrapped for UV2 in here, and UV1 for my metal overlay. Okay, so we'll do this again with the green, and then we'll go to the green, and the main layer, we'll make it green here, and then we'll go to green painted mask map, and we'll go to green this, like that, and then I'm going to try something I haven't tried before. I'm going to right click in here. Nope, doesn't let you copy it. A lot of other things I didn't do let you copy stuff over, but, and we're going to click this on first, because now we're on the green side, which we didn't see until we got to here. And we're gonna say the metal under base map again. Bam, and look at that. Our green is showing up and our metal edge wear is now there. Now, it's super boring, the metal edge we have right now, but we're gonna fix that in a second. Right now, the edge wear, is just based off those simple lines we had in Photoshop, right? So if I come back to this alpha, that's the metal edge wear, which is pretty crap. So what I usually do is either I'll bring this out and do it a separate thing and play with it, but this is where the artistry comes in, and I'm going to filter gallery, and then I'll pull back out, and I just want to make it a little bit more noisy. So sometimes I'll try sponge, which makes it the rough pastel. Sometimes I just go to noise, but I think the one I liked is something. I liked one today, it came out pretty cool. Oh, you know, the thing I did first is I blurred it. So File, Blur, Gaussian Blur, just to give it a little bit of meat to work off the edges with. Then I'll go to Filter. I'm going to use the Filter Gallery again and see if I like this a little bit better. It's giving me some noise in Fresco, but I'm not sure if I like that. Let's try this one. Maybe turn it up. Yeah, A-splatter. There we go. Okay. So I'll say, okay, I got a little bit of a break. If I save this now, it'll be the same thing, but I'm going to come up here again to Filter, and I'm going to go to Noise, and I'm going to say Add Noise, and just do a noise change here. That. I'm going to go back to my levels. So basically I'm just going to tweak this until I get it the way I like it. Pull this way down so I get this kind of thing. Even could come in here and paint if I wanted to. I could paint my own edge damage. I'm going to do something else. I know I had something that was better looking earlier today. So I just keep coming back in here till I get something that looks a little bit more randomized, I guess. That one's kind of better, and if I put the noise on it, that's kind of cool. Let's see, intensity. I don't care about the background. I don't like the way it kind of broke up this space. And I made it really thick again too. You could have thinned it out. I'll come back in here, do some levels again just to play with it, get it a little bit wider in some areas, a little bit darker. You know, I could copy it and paste it on top of it. That's why I usually do it outside here. But you get the idea. And I'll save it over the old one. Metal base map, save, yes, and okay. And then come back into here. As long as it worked, which may not be where I meant to save it. I'll probably save it in the wrong spot. Back to, oops, cancel. Go back to Photoshop. That's right, I saved it in the wrong spot. I'll go here. It's not supposed to be in my class example. It's supposed to be in Unity Assets, Arts, Class Example, Textures, this one. Save this. Now if I go back into Unity, it should have updated it. Here it is. It's a little bit better. But I mean, you can keep going. That's the point, is that this mask will allow you to do stuff like make it dirtier in certain places. You can only move this, turn this a little bit so you can see that green edge here. Oh, that's like that. And I'm just doing this fast and dirty, but you get the idea how powerful that'll be, because now you have three tiling textures, and the only thing that changes is the mask you're using over the top. So I mean, again, this is a really crap mask, and take your time and make a nice mask, but it's already unwrapped the way you like it. It's already doing the stuff you want. Anyway, that's what we're going for. That's what you're looking for.